All right, family. I hope y'all ready for this conversation. It is a special edition of Earth Mama Live as we talk about election and the post strategies for Black America on this Sunday evening. And I am so happy and grateful to be joined by some awesome sisters and brothers who are going to be talking with us tonight about what's the strategy, family. And if you notice, I put that music on Ain't No Stopping Us Now because I don't know about y'all when I was growing up. When that came on, that meant Black folks was moving and grooving. So who we got with us tonight? We got Sister Kua with us tonight. And Sister Kua is with Boapa. We got Brother Merv Brookins with us, who does a lot of community work from Brother Brothers. We got Sister Javon Muhammad, who is the CEO of SWLA out of Louisiana. We got our dear brother, big brother, Daryl Roberts from the Robert Family Development Center. And we're rounding it off tonight with dear brother Michael Benjamin. How y'all doing tonight?
Tired.
Good. My introductions. I went old school. I went to, was that McFadden and Whitehead or something? I used to read that song. So we have elections coming up, family. Y'all may see me to the side because I'm gonna be like, it's another computer right here that I have to work on to do other stuff with. But I want to start off real quick and ask you all, as you kind of talk about maybe your vision for Black people, what are some of the top key issues, if you can share one or two of them, that you think Black people are facing, and how do you think we can address those issues? And so I think I'm gonna start with Brother Merv Brookins.
Oh wow, I get to go first, huh? Well, I think one of the biggest issues that we face as a community is finding a way to come together above our differences and above our disagreements. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, regardless of who wins. How do we come together and sit at the table with those that hold different opinions than ourselves? So I think moving forward, being able to set aside our differences and recognizing that we have more in common and we can accomplish more together than we can apart is going to be our biggest challenge moving forward.
Right on. Thank you for that, Brother Merv. Today I'm doing my engineering because my assistant only works in the daytime, in the morning on Sundays. I'm gonna go to Sister Kua. What about you, Sister Kua? What do you think?
Man, sorry, I'm just trying to get my bearings. Today's been a crazy day. What I really want for Black people is to not accept breadcrumbs, to ask for more, to, not just be happy with being the one that is on the top of the white man's list to get stuff, that we can say, you know what, this is not good enough. I want all my people to do well. So that we can just not accept breadcrumbs.
Right now. Okay, then I guess we're gonna go over to Brother Mike B. And so as you all are talking, I'm trying to make sure people get to see who is talking. All right, Brother Mike B, what you think?
I think the number one thing we have to do as a people is we have to start to look at struggles through the same lens and understand that issues that affect Africans nationally, globally, are what's affected us locally as well. So, the struggle, we only get what we're going to get, like Sister Kua said. We can't keep going to the table and begging to be a part of a system that isn't built for us. So we have to start looking at our struggle through the same lens. And so, like Brother Brookins said, it's that unity piece. And it starts with us. We oftentimes want to look at and see how other people view our struggle, right? But we have to start to look at our struggle through the same lens.
Right on. Let's see. Sister Javon Muhammad, what about you?
So first, I'm agreeing with everyone else, but and in that agreement, I think economics remains one of our top issues. Being able to own some of this land, being able to control things so that we have a louder voice and agenda when we speak in the community, when we speak in our community, when we speak outside our community. Economics has been an issue for us throughout history while in America. And, we still have a tremendous, that's my Trump language, wealth gap, when we look at our wealth versus other people's wealth. I also think there's been a breakdown in our value system, or at least the ability for us to recognize that others may have a value system that is not like theirs. And in the spirit of one of the brothers before me, just recognizing that we don't all believe the same thing, and we need to have respect for what people believe and stop the bullying, which leads to unity, like the brother before me said.
Right on. And then last but not least, I believe, is our dear brother. Sorry about that, family. Is our dear brother, Brother Daryl Roberts.
Thank you, Ro. I think for me, it's a combination of everything that has been spoken. And I think as we talk for the rest of the evening, there'll be other things that will be talked about the need for us as men and women to have black men, black women, to have real conversation that's not as emotional or frustrating for either side. Because at some point we just have to recognize we're listening to each other. It just may be that we don't agree. And again, going back to what people have said previously, disagreeing doesn't mean we have to be disagreeable, nor does it mean that we can't work together for the next piece. So as we look past Tuesday's election, to me, setting an agenda for the Black community in Sacramento, since the majority of us are Sacramento, becomes the first thing that I think about. I heard Kula mention seeking more than just crumbs. Totally agree with that. And how do we go about that may appear different to each other. But I think we need to have that conversation about why are you doing that and not be afraid of the person's answer. But I also don't think it's appropriate for somebody to become upset because somebody asked the question, why are you doing that? Because if you're doing that for the right reason, answering the question is not the issue. The issue is whether or not you're really being sincere about why you're making those moves and whether people accept it or not, especially when you become a public figure, as pretty much everybody on this show is a public figure in terms of our community. You should be okay with people asking the question. And I think the dog agrees with me about that.
Right on. So then I would guess the next question is, neither dog is up there agreeing. Like, that's right. Mm-hmm. So I guess the question is, with this election, I've seen a lot of almost like fear-based kind of stuff with Black folks, which I think if you look at past elections, it has always been some kind of fear-based for Black people. And then when whoever wins, sometimes we end up being in the same position, if not worse off, because now you have to ask your new slave master to see you, you know what I mean? And we don't even know if they're going to do that. So, okay, let me back up. With Ice Cube's proposal for Trump's Black America, why are we struggling so hard with any of these plans? Like, does there only has to be one? Can there be more than one as a plan? Why do we keep seeing ourselves as a monolith instead of seeing the diversity that is Black people and maybe some people for the plan is not? You know what I mean? Like, how can we move past some of this stuff with the plan? What do you think in terms of, and not just Ice Cube's plan, I guess both sides have a plan. It's the platinum plan, is the lift every voice and swing plan. I think it's something like that. With the Democrat side, and then you have Ice Cube side. I don't know. And I think the Black Caucus may have something. Black Lives Matter, I think they have a plan. So that's right there, about at least 6 plans. But how do you all feel about the plans that people are coming up for Black people? Well, for people of color, I think Ice Cube was one that's very specific for people that are Black. How do y'all feel about those in particular? So we can start getting to some of this meat, because before we never had nobody bringing the Black agenda up seriously during a presidential election. Anybody could take a stab at that.
I think a reason you see a lot of people voicing different opinions, in opposition and for, is because, again, one thing we struggle with in our communities is getting the correct information, right? And so people are getting secondhand, third-hand information about what things are, and they are taking talking points and running with it, as opposed to really doing research. And that's what I was saying earlier about, the only way we're going to advance our cause and what we need to do is we all have to see the struggle through a unified lens. Every other ethnicity does it. Every other ethnicity, they have a uniform lens. When they make a statement, Mexicans, Jewish people, the Southeast Asian community, whatever it is, they all have a unified voice. And so what happens is that, you take Ice Cube, for example, he puts out a plan, but people aren't up on the plan. They don't know the information or the parts. They just see that it's Ice Cube who's proposing it and, whatever it is. And so I think what happens is, again, we have to start looking at things through a unified voice. The first thing I always do when I work with youth or young folks or whatever is I always teach them to, first and foremost, go take a look at what it is you're trying to speak about. Go see who authored it, go see the parts of it, go see what it's about completely. So then you can make an informed decision and make informed, comments or decisions. So I think that's what it is.
So I think that there's an assumption in the community that all Black people have a liberal agenda. And that's where I struggle, is that we're all supposed to, one of the issues with Ice Cube's platform, which I don't have a problem with. I didn't read his whole agenda, but I think him expressing an agenda and also expressing the intelligence of working with who's in power, who may have the power to help us through an agenda, is smart. But my experience in the community is that Black people, especially, I'm a midwife, and in the midwifery community as well, Black people are assumed to be liberal. And as soon as you step out of this box, this liberal box, then there's an attack. When those other communities aren't really as invested in who the president is. They're invested in the idea of power for their community and resources for their community. So in that same vein, when we look at the Asian community or other communities, they will work with whoever is in leadership to attain what they need for their community, or sometimes they don't care and don't work with them at all, because again, they have that economic base that allows them to take care of their community without pandering to either side.
I think the ability to pivot in that manner that Javon is talking about, to me, is what we miss. I also don't necessarily think, and I've been knowing Brother Michael for a long time, so I can disagree, and he won't worry about that. I'm not sure we have to all agree on the business community, the social side. I don't think we all have to agree on things. I just think we all have to be open to listening to the viewpoint of that particular sector, because the business community is going to have a different approach to how it addresses issues than those of us who are in the public sector, those of us who do social services. But that doesn't mean that they have to necessarily always be wrong or we have to always be right. But the truth of the matter is that, most often, especially when we find ourselves open to doing that pivot, that is often seen as a negative. And rather than recognize it as a way that you can build power for your community. Because as you say, doesn't matter who wins on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we have to begin figuring out what direction do we go as a community, or individually if you decide to take it that way. But for us, at least on this, we all go talk about community. And we've done that as long as I've known anybody here.
We'll talk.
I think it's a question. Well, for me, I think it's a question about trust, and who's putting the plan forward. And I believe trust comes with consistency, with working in the communities that you're trying to lead. So I'm not that versed on Ice Cube's plan myself, but I believe when we get leadership in positions that are consistent in the communities that they serve, I think there's a trust that's built up, and you're more likely to have that community buying into the plan as opposed to being disconnected as a lot of communities currently are. There's a disengagement, and with that comes distrust. So I think it's about trust and building that trust up before plans are put forward and expecting people to follow.
Anybody else want to build on that?
And I agree, but that's why my point is that it's important for we as a people is to take a look at it because when he first put forth, when he went to present it to both sides, the first thing I said was, okay, that's cool. I went and looked at it, and the only problem I had with it is that I felt like, again, like Sister Cool said, crumbs on the table, because they met with you, but what exactly did they like? There's 13 parts of it. Like, which one? Was it 7? Was it 6? Was it 5? Which part of the plan were they looking to help and address? And to date, we haven't got that answer. And so you do have to be careful in terms of when you present things like that, because unfortunately at this point in time, it looks like an endorsement. And so just listening to a plan, we all know about that. Just listening to a plan, I mean, people do that all the time. But my question is, I'm very solution based. Okay, they listened, but what part of the plan are they trying to help with?
Okay, so I guess my bigger question is, because now we're looking at strategy. I think sometimes as Black folks, we're always worried about what appearances look like instead of what's tangible in our community. So Black people probably spend more time on imagery, on what you got on, what people think we have or don't have. It's the oldest trick in the book. Even our enemies are super technologists in terms of using even just one picture with somebody. Like, oh, they on my team. That's why I refuse to take pictures with people sometimes, because I don't want them to think that I'm with them. But the long run is either I am or not. How do we use this moment that the Black agenda, that anybody's putting forth the Black agenda, how do we use that in strategy to really help us with economics, with housing, with education, all of these things we know that totally affect Black people? The incarceration rate, the murdering of Black girls and women at the all-time high in this country. How do we use this moment to have strategy for after November the 3rd? Not imagery, not, people put Black Lives Matter on their t-shirt. How do we make Black Lives Matter at the bank for a loan? How do we make Black Lives Matter for people to get a job so they can take care of their family? How do we do that? Because that's the strategic part of it all.
I think there's two folds to that, right? Because so I struggle with the lack of jumping in to work on an agenda. If there are 6 agendas and I don't know, because I'm out here working, trying to do all of those things, then is the right answer for, a group to be selected from various representations and they get together and fine tune and merge some of those things? I mean, I think sometimes we struggle with how to implement. We do a lot of planning. I lead clinics that we're always rhetoric, we're always planning, but the implementation is difficult. And so I'm not mad at anybody who put out a plan, because they put out a plan. And for me, it feels like, whether or not I love the plan, if we have some things on the table, then how do we get in the moment? How do we pull them in? How do we work on fine tuning that plan so that, many have representation and we can all agree on some parts of the plan? We're not going to agree on 100% of the plan, but, at some point we're going to have to agree on economics, because that is what you are leading to. Like, how do we start to take care of ourselves? We're going to do that whether there's a plan or not. But I do think it's smart to get around a plan and to work on the plan and to talk about the plan so that we have a roadmap and we can be reminded often where we're going and where our milestones are and how we're making progress, so we can have some measurements for outcomes. But I also think we have to have a little bit more courage and a little bit more gumption to just do the work. Like, we can't even, if we said everybody leave, when we've said that over the years, I came up in the Nation of Islam, it's like, we gonna buy some land. Right. At that point, we will have 10 people that say they're gonna buy land, 10 people who can't do it, 10 people who mad about the land. We actually, like when you said tangible, we actually have to get some things going economically. But to do that, we have to understand that the white man ain't gonna take care of us. And we really struggle with that. And that has just been my experience. I'm from San Francisco. I'm here in Louisiana now. And I feel like, because of, history, it's on steroids out here, where we just won't be shook loose to understand that we are going to have to provide for our needs. And if we have key people in key places and key situations, they don't have to work now. And we're going to have to make something out of the opportunities that we were given.
You said a lot right there, Javon. So what does that look like? What does strategy look like? What are some of the things that we can do strategically? And you said something that was very key, because sometimes with this whole election, for me, I've seen a lot of division, and I mean in terms of class and economics and like all of that. And Black folks are in every area. I'm serious. You could probably be in the devil's den. There'd be some of us down there. Or you know what I mean? Like, let's just be honest. But how do we use key people so that we can bring our people up? So we can own some of this property, no matter where you are in this country. You know, we can have, everybody has their community that they can rely on and shop with each other, and not just shop, but actually like own some land. Like in the Jewish community, most of them live near a synagogue because on certain days they are not supposed to drive their car. They're supposed to walk to go do prayer. So I'm saying, how do we get to that part? Where's the strategy, and what do we do no matter if it's Biden or Trump, or, you know, what should we be doing? Or no matter locally, what should be doing? We should be doing to hold people accountable to make our cities better, make our communities better. What are some of the strategies for that?
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kula.
No, I was going to say, just kind of listening to this conversation, and I think it's important, like the way that I look at things, because I'm a big proponent of, you know, again, all skin folk and kin folk, right? And so I think that what you have to think about, what is your framing of things? So the way that I have come to frame things is from a social justice lens, right? And for me, what social justice means is you're thinking about a redistribution of wealth, or redistribution of opportunities, or redistribution of privileges. And so I'm looking at how are you moving in a way that is actually trying to redistribute those things, right? To those who haven't historically had it, right? And so that's how I watch people move, and the strategy that I'm working on, that I'm pushing, the movement that I'm building, is one of a social justice movement where we're bringing up social justice issues, whether it's around housing, so thinking about affordable housing, whether it's around representation. So, you know, I'm one of those who is a no on Measure A in terms of a strong mayor, because I want strong communities, and I'm thinking about how does that measure affect social justice or thwart social justice. And so it's really important to be consistent and to build a model for people to be involved, because what happens is after election after big things happen, people get tired. So what I'm trying to do is build a movement where we can plug people in, you know, where they fit in. We can send you text messages around important things that are coming up legislatively, at the county level, at the city council level, so that you can be involved consistently, because that's how change happens, right? Putting together a report card for social justice on those who are our elected officials, and seeing how that, you know, how we shake that out. So for me, it's really important. I look at things, I frame it from a social justice lens. So even if I'm talking about ICE plan, which I haven't seen, but I'm like, how is your plan talking about a redistribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges? And if it's not talking about that, then I don't want to see it, right?
The challenge with that, though, Kula, is if you just take that angle, then that means that we're going to disagree on things we don't have to get stuck on. And I'll say to you, even if, you know, you and I both know that, you know, we have different thoughts on Measure A, but that's because I'm looking at systemic change when I look at Measure A. I just think that the way that we've done things in this city, with a city manager basically setting the agenda, has not worked for us as a community. And I do see what you guys are doing, but I'll also say to you, for me, consistency is when you recognize 4 years ago, as you and I both did, that we didn't have enough funding out there to even be distributed in our community, we supported Measure U. Now, you and I both supported Measure G. I believe that we both supported Measure G, funding for that area. And we weren't trying to get peanuts. We were trying to get $12 to $14 million each year to change the system. But then when we get to Measure A, I don't want to think that because I don't agree with you on that, we can't agree on other things. And I'll say to you, that's where I think we get stuck. And I think we get stuck to a point where it really becomes anti the thought of being united. And I also am scared, and I'll use the word scared, I'm not afraid to use it, that we are starting to put a wedge between us as Black men and Black women using those tactics. And I just want to say, because we've talked about, you and I have talked. I don't
Oh,
know
yeah.
how many people. I don't know how many people take the time to spend that time to talk. But we don't spend enough time. We as a community, as community leaders, don't spend enough time talking about why do you think this? Why do you believe this? And allow me the opportunity to explain myself. We can differ on that, but we can continue to move down the road to improving our communities. And to me, that's where we get sidetracked.
And I don't want to go off track, but I would like to, like, where is the what is causing? You said that's causing disagreement between Black women and Black men. What exactly is doing that?
I would love to know, because it seems to me. Well, let me give you. Just as we talk about Measure A, I think we look at political campaigns, and suddenly Black women are saying Black men should support Black women, and Black men are saying, well, you should support the Black men who are running, and we get stuck there. And I think that when we get past whatever election we're talking about, that we got to come together and get past that. And
Are we talking about Les Simmons? I just want to call it.
That. Yeah,
okay. I'm just like, if we gonna do it, let's do it, right?
There's only that race. Come on now, stop it. The other race has two men in it, a white man and a Black man. So we know that's not what we're talking about. So, excuse me, Sister Javon, I was talking about that local stuff. But what I'm saying to you is that once we get past that election, really think it's important that we come back together and do what we said we would do 3 months ago. Really sitting down and talking about how do we address those issues, then how do we move forward.
I'm going mute.
There you go.
But let me weigh in a little bit. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sis.
I also want to hold space though for. I believe. So there's 2 tracks. I hope that we choose 2 tracks, because there is that track, of organizing, of meetings, of local voting, and I'm not suggesting that no one not vote. I'm just saying there's that track, but I also think we need a doing track, because I'm gonna take it back to some communities who are doing the work regardless of who the vote goes to. It's like the work still, even if we just look at the presidential election, we just look at Trump and Biden, the work still has to be done. Because I'm sure I'm not the only one, first of all, who just knows it, but also saw all the memes this election season with pictures of the hood under a Democrat, the hood under a Republican. It was the same old hood, the same old issues. And so, I don't always want to get sidetracked on voting and what we're going to get from the vote and then forget to do the work. And I'm not suggesting that everybody have to be on one track. I think we are very talented and very diverse people, and we need to put people where they're beneficial. If you're good at something, we need to be building in all environments. So if you're a banker, let's put you on banking. Let's make sure that, we get business loans. And I'm simplifying it, but we have enough intelligence and diversity to have a multi-pronged approach to getting ourselves out of this ditch that we're in. And there's still that part that's great for voting and organizing and going to meetings. That's a part, but it's not the whole part. And the reason why for me it can't be the whole part is because it's a long journey, and we've been on it for centuries, ever since the arrival here. And we still are talking about the same thing. So while somebody is doing that thing, somebody else have to be doing something else so that we can bring it all together toward whole community. But to stop and do that, I get concerned about, because I think that has been our hope before. It's a new moment right now. I'm really loving, the conversations about defunding and reimagining. All those things make me excited. And, I'm looking at the work and I'm loving it, but that's one part of the work. We still have to have that ace in our pocket to pull out so that we can get ahead.
Sister Ro, before we move on, I just want to go back to what Brother Benjamin said, as well as Sister Kula. One of the things the brother said, he talked about, was imparting accurate information. I don't think any approach is going to be successful unless we have the support of the people in the community. I'm a big advocate of starting there and building up as opposed to top down. And I think when we have that information, that accurate information, when we have the information that Kula was speaking of, the knowledge about the different measures and the social justice piece, we have to connect that information to the average person in the hood to get their buy-in. I think where intelligent people in the community will respond if they have information that they trust, believe in, that is self-motivating. So I think the strategy has to be to connect those type of dots to the masses in the community and build up from there with people who are chosen by the community, not self-appointed leaders, but people who naturally rise up as leaders in the communities. Let's empower them with accurate information, and then that way the structure is strong enough to withstand what we know is going to come, the opposition.
I do think a big part of the strategy is the division. That's how our opposition is so good that they know as long as we're divided, then they can skate past Boo Boo for president, and we be fighting for Boo Boo to be president because we're so divided with each other. Seriously, I do think in order for someone to be well, we have to recognize that they're first sick, and we don't do that. It's like trying to play catch up when you don't have anything to catch up with. It's like being in a boat race. You don't even have a canoe. You don't have anything at this point in the game, or you got a canoe with a hole in it, that's taking on water rapidly. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I agree with all of y'all's point, but I do think at some point we are going to have to talk about the things that some of us have bought into as a people. There was a time when I was coming up, I remember this enough from Sacramento, where people would sit down with each other if they heard something. They would go right to the person and be like, hey, what's going on? Blah, 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 blah. Somewhere along the line, and in my opinion, I think a lot of this happened in the crack era. Like now we're looking at all of the things that was built up because of the things we lost in that era, where we talk in the weeds, but we don't move in the weed. And we're not accountable to each other in the weed. We only become accountable to the we if we're losing, if I want you to be on my team, but I don't think I owe you anything because I don't value you anyway. I think at some point we're going to have these real conversations so that it would be almost like a no-brainer to stand behind somebody if you know they're going to be fair to all of us and not just their friends. And so it looked like now back in the day when you did stuff, you would be kind of quiet about it, but now people do it in your face. I'm sorry, Daryl. Brother Daryl. You were gonna say something.
So I think it was Mike.
Oh, somebody. I don't know who that was. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's all good. I think what happens is that, just like Brother Brookins said and Kula was saying, is, and again, it goes back to at what level of information people are getting. And so that's going to come from the people in the neighborhood who are trusted, period, point blank. See, the way I look at it, it's two connections to the work, as Sister Muhammad was saying, right? You're either associated with the work or you're active in the work, right? And a lot of people, voices that we're getting are associated with the work and they're not active in the work, and that's a problem. So I don't need for you to be the voice if you're just associated with the work and you're not active in it. We need to trust those that are active in the work, those that are the boots on the ground, those that are seeing these things from a first person standpoint. And like Sister Rose said, you get the divisiveness comes from, they'll choose a certain person, right? Promote a certain person. This is what our enemy will do, right? And then they become the voice of the whole struggle. And that's where it's wrong. What happens is that, the presidential election, that's so far out of our hands. But what we can do is concentrate on what's going on locally. That's why, like, the breakdown of all these propositions, the breakdowns of what's going on locally is what's really, really, really important. And so, those two distinctions we have to make with our people. And that's why the information, like Brother Brookins said, it's going to have to come from a trusted source in their community, because you're either associated with the work or you're active. And those that are just associated with the work, they need to fall back and let those that are active in the work be the voices.
But don't you sometimes think some of us are disconnected even in our communities, and that's why we go to whoever they appoint to us? Like, I think there's some work there that we have to do. That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like we have people in our community who don't fit in any of our 6 boxes here today. And I think it's many of those people. And sometimes instead of us asking them what they need or what's going on with you, we assume that maybe you want affordable housing. Well, maybe you're on the track to home ownership. Like, maybe you should help that person buy the house, because we had affordable housing and low income housing for like 70 years in the United States. which breeds a lot of poverty. So it's kind of like, I think sometimes even those of us who do the work, I have to keep asking young people what's fresh this year, not what was fresh when I was a teenager or when I was close enough where they felt me. So I think that keeps changing. I think we don't recognize that there are a lot of people standing on the outside of what we call the Black community. And because we don't do diversity within the Black community, which is why people end up in other camps. And then we can't even have strategy to be able to say, okay, this person's over here in this camp. So if this people went over here, I'm gonna need you to be helping me with some stuff. Because somewhere we're still bonded together. And it is that bond that Black people have that don't feel like we have as much anymore. Unless I'm paying you or giving you a favor and now you owe me, but you're not doing it because it's the right thing to do because we're thinking about our children and our elders and everybody in between. So we got to talk about that. I think it's enough of us. We're so brilliant. We're like probably the most educated Black folks we've ever had in history. And yet we're sitting up here with less than our ancestors had.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. What is the bond? Like, because I'm trying to really think about like what is the, if we're looking at, you know, centric circles and all that, right? What is the bond? What is it? What is that connector of us being Black people? Is it our skin color?
You know, for
me, is that what it is? Because our experiences are different. Our experience, like I think about my sister who, I don't want to put her business out there, but like she's doing very well for herself, lives in Roseville, like but then there's different, she's an immigrant, and so then there's that experience, but see, what is the connector?
Yeah.
Because we keep saying the Black community, but for what? And that's why I keep going back to what is the lens that we see it from? Because if I'm looking at it from a social justice lens, then I'm like, okay, this is what I care about. So then if I'm talking about redistributing wealth and you're a Black person who has a lot of money, then I'm not worried about you at this point.
I agree.
Because I'm trying to make sure that others get it too.
And I get the lens piece. I learned about the lens when I was when I was with Javon in Idaho. So I totally get the lens. But I also know I know a lot of Black people who had money, but they always had to help the people who didn't. See, I just don't get to be rich and go be with the rich people, and it's the end of that. For me, when you're Black and American, you got a little bit of something. People are always coming to ask you for something, whether to help bury somebody, help somebody pay rent.
Sure.
I mean, that's been my whole life. That's why I ain't got no kids now. You know,
so then I go back to what is the connector? What is it?
I'm a Black woman. For me, that's the connector for me. And no matter how high I get or low I get, I'm still going. I can travel to other countries and feel connected to Black people.
So would it be the inference by the shared skin color would imply that we have shared life experiences because of our skin color? I believe in most communities, what really brings people together are the shared struggles. So I think that's the implied connection right there. I remember when I was growing, so Del Paso Heights today is different than when I grew up so many years ago, right? Because the struggles, you had families, siblings that grew up together. Our family had 6 siblings. My neighbor had 6 siblings, and we all grew up together. So we had shared life experiences. So when you hear Pacer for Life and that deep tradition in the Heights, it's because of the shared struggles that we had to come together to survive with. And that's where the pride come from, that deep-rooted pride. That's where it comes from. So I would suggest that connector is our shared struggles, and probably that's because of our shared skin color. I don't know.
I think that's part of it. I think there's no one magical answer. But first of all, I think there's no one, and I'm with you, Kua. I just know that I'm the type of person that if I see a Black person struggling, I could be in the school and the kid ain't even mine, but if I see the kid struggling, I'm gonna stop and say something. I have Southern roots. When you see people, you acknowledge each other. You don't be like, I don't see them. Now in California, I've witnessed when people look you right in the face and don't speak to you. I've experienced that. But I also know, because I know my history and where I come from, I can't do that. And people can always call me on the carpet. I always get called to the carpet somehow, because they know deep who I am is that, Mama Ro, you out of balance. Let me tell you what's up. I'm gonna listen. I'm like, who the hell is you? Because I know at the end of the day, I'm connected to this person.
I think the shared value too makes us the shared struggle makes us value each other. I just, I came up in the hood in San Francisco, And in a time when we had the candy house and you got your hair done in the projects. And I think all of those things make you value your neighbor and you want them to win. Right. So it's that acknowledgement that we're in this together. And at some point we gotta win. Like we gotta stop being on the climb and we have to win. And that attachment plus some ritual, attachment to ritual that makes us healthy, that we're even bonded through that void because it seems like we're all, because of experiences, we're always trying to feel our soul because that was a part of the stripping process. And we look at these other communities and they're attached to all of these rituals. When I get 16, I get to do this. When I'm 21, I get to do this. We celebrate this, we celebrate that. We're always looking for that so that we can have this repair to make us whole. And I think those are some of the things that make us connected in a Black experience. I do feel like today, some of that experience is being torn apart because our interests are distracted. And again, we have lack of respect for different people in their journey, or we don't allow people to have a value system. It has to be one system. And if you don't agree with you, can you tell that that's my issue for today? There has to be one, because I experienced that. I just want to put it out there that I am not a liberal. And it's very difficult to work with Black people when you're not a liberal. I don't care. I'm, my mama is Black. I grew up around Black liberals. I love Black liberals. I understand. But I also feel like we don't have respect for people when they say that I respect how you get down. I don't get down like that. That's a problem for us. And it's causing us to be torn apart from that shared experience and that shared community. But I do believe that is what binds us, because when I wake up in the morning, I want Black people to win. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your agenda is, as long as it's not hurting the people. I want you to win. And I think, when you're talking to other people and they're constantly saying the Black community, in the essence, we want each other to win.
It's Kevin grown up in the projects in New Orleans and grew up in the segregated South. I grew up at a time we always talked about the talented 10. And we talked about that in terms of those who went to college, those who broke through, those who started businesses, things like that. And we always thought about those folks and that 10% having a responsibility to reach back and help others. So to me, that's part of where I walk. That's part of how I walk. So yeah, it is a little different for me when I hear somebody who has made it, who I thought was part of the talented 10, say, well, I'm not in favor of taxes, of being taxed. Or, my plan is, excludes other people. I'm not concerned about them. And that for me is a tough one, because I always thought that as people became successful, that they would look around and recognize who assisted them to get there. So when we talk about the commonality, that's what I see common. And yeah, in that case, that is about a Blackness, but it really is about a common Blackness, a common feeling about the community, about people who look like you and care about them. And to me, that becomes the walk that I have on a daily basis.
Right on. So how
and I think that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No.
And I think that what happens is that we talk about this bond, and we talk about the Black community and what that looks like and what that is. And I think that even that definition has been socially constructed by the United States of America, right? Even how you view, what success is, for example, right? Because just like Sister Cool, I got friends, they made it, moved straight out of the neighborhood, right? Instead of staying and building and kind of, whatever, and that's their choice. I have no problem with that. I won't leave the neighborhood because it's where my heart is. But at the same time, my definition of success is a little bit different. It's not socially constructed from what the United States has given me. We moved away from a shared sugar community, which is what I call. And that's when you go down the street and, you shared sugar. You went down to wherever and you bought sugar and brought it back. We've adopted this individualism, right? Which we think is attached to success.
That's white supremacy, Michael. That's white supremacy. Sorry, that's
right.
white supremacy.
Well, right, that's why. No, that's fine. That's fine. But we've gotten away from our our traditional tribal rituals, which is functioning in a shared community, to adopting a European individualized definition of success. Both liberals and conservatives, black, it don't matter. It's the definition of success is, making it and then moving out to where, they are, instead of staying and building. And so we have to get back to that. And that's why I always go back to, we as a people have to start to unify our vision in terms of what we want. And we cannot continue to be fragmented in our voice, because that's where the division is. They'll use that, they'll take it, they'll flip it, they'll kind of restructure our words, our everything. Like Sister Rose said, that's why sometimes you don't take pictures with people, because you don't want it to be an indirect endorsement. And so we have to be careful of that.
Right on. You said something that was key, though. You said that people leave the hood. I got to give you a little pushback on that. First of all, can you afford to have what's in your head? That's number one. Can you afford to buy the house in your hood? But the other part sometimes, Mike, would be
I can't anymore. In my hood anymore.
Talk about safety when it comes to us, because those numbers of black people being murdered, that's not happening by the KKK. That's happening by your brother or sister who looks like you. So we have things we have to do strategically to even benefit from half the stuff that is supposed to be there for us. Like, we know safety is an issue. Accountability is an issue for our community. Like, when it comes to accountability, we hear crickets. So we know we have violence in our community, then it's something that we need to be able to. There was a time where you could walk up to people who you knew was in the gang and be like, hey, there was rules to this. There was rules to who you mess with and who you didn't. But because it's safety is an issue, some people leave the hood because it's a safety issue. Because I love my people, but I don't want to live dead amongst them, because that's not living at all. Having bars on your windows, that's not safe. So unless we're willing to talk about safety, see, I'm seeing some key issues. Like, we're trying to get to this other stuff, but if we're not talking about what's going on between us as black people, and we're not going to talk about safety, and we're not going to talk about predatorist behavior that we see when we talk about black business and helping little black children or whatever, we got to talk about those things, because it makes it harder for us to access the things that are on that ballot. I can't.
So, but Ro, to that point too,
because
I've heard people talk about, yes, what about us? We're killing each other and all this, but I think the conversation has to be also, why is it? What are the systems that are in place that are pushing us to be killing each other? What is like that is at the root of things that we also have to talk about, right? And that we have to think through.
I agree, Kua, but I also think that is very, see, how do I say this without trying to be funny? No white supremacist is making some black men kill black women. We're up to almost a 900 black women that's been murdered in the U.S. since January. So who wants to look at a killer and be like, why did you just kill my daughter? Is it poverty? That's not going to cut it, because the white man mess with them every day and they ain't knocking none of their heads off. So I think we have to have a better response. See, I don't care about what white people do, because that's their stuff. I almost expect for them to be a certain way. But we're going to do brothers and sisters in love. We got to do brothers and sisters in accountability. And
absolutely so.
Death is fine. I don't want to hear about no white supremacist system, because my ancestors survived the real white supremacist system. This is just some residue. I can deal with this. I can, really.
No, this is real. This is real. This is real white supremacy system that we're still living in. It may not be not be as blatant as you see it, but in thinking about even our culture, our connectedness, the individuality, the saying you have to. Michael was talking about, all the things that we have to perform, right? We have the stresses that they put on us because we're trying to perform and live into this system of white supremacy that is about, okay, I'm gonna get mine, I'm gonna do me, and then what does that leave us? So that also creates the trauma. And I think that we have to hold each other accountable, but I think we cannot also forget the systems that also are in place that make it.
I forgot that. See, that's my thing. That's an assumption you're making for your argument. I never forget that white supremacy exists. I already know that. You trying to get me off track to talk about white supremacy?
No, I'm not. What I was
accountable to each other, cool. That's all I'm saying.
What I was getting at was you saying white supremacy is watered down. I think I was addressing you saying that white supremacy is not
I can't even put white
that
supremacy
it's
in.
watered down. That's what I was saying. It still exists.
I agree, but when you say white supremacy to black people, it takes us off of responsibility. It takes us. No, this is look. This my honest to God truth, because I really do.
Well, good. Yeah,
How do you look somebody in the face whose mom has been murdered, or daughter who has been murdered, a son who's been murdered, and say, I know this person did, but it's white supremacy? That's not gonna fly.
And I wouldn't do that.
How can we govern ourselves? Is all we have to do is pit on other people. At some point, we have to, as a people, say this is unacceptable.
Absolutely,
we cannot do this to each other.
Absolutely, I'm not disagreeing with you on that at all.
When I hear white supremacy, bells go off for me, because it means like now we get ready to not have this conversation that we probably really should be having.
But what I'm saying, sorry, go ahead.
Mama Ro, I don't think what either you saying are in disagreement. I think you're talking about two different approaches. I think Sister Ro is talking about accountability now, right now. And I think what Kula is talking about, what led up to that point. So you're not in disagreement. It's just whatever you how you approach it. And you're just approaching it from two different ends, but you're talking about exactly the same thing, because we can't, Sister Ro, we can't we can't have one without the other. We can't get an understanding of what led up to unless we're first willing to talk about accountability, not shifting blame, but accepting responsibility right now. And once that happens, once we move from accepting accountability, it's about what do we do about it? And then when we start talking about what we do about it, we move into what Sister Kula is saying, all these things that led up in place to that, which ironically, what Brother was talking about earlier, about people who move out of the community, that's connected to this in a very distant way. And let me share what I mean. If the people that become doctors, lawyers, nurses, and successes, when they move out of the community, they take with them the tangible example of what these younger people coming up can be. And then the only thing that is left in the community are examples that we don't want them to see. So all of it is interconnected, and you're both talking about the same thing. You're just talking about it from two different ends. And this is from a person who's been in the system and understand both sides of it. Brother to brother who deals with justice-involved people, our motto is accountability first, transformation, which is what Kula is talking about, understanding what led up to, and then redemption, doing what you got to do to act on that better person. So I don't, and this conversation is good because I think we got to be able to talk about both sides of it, but understand we're not disagreeing at all. We're just approaching it from two different ends.
Thank you, Brother Merv. No, I do. I just feel like at some point, and I agree with everyone is saying, but I would love to live for the day when I can sit amongst the table and white people are not a blip in our thought. Because I've seen black people do it before when they was under much harsher conditions than I could ever be in my worst dream. I've seen them say, we know the white man's after us. We know they lynching us from trees, but we still going to make it. I don't have time to say, watch out for the white man, because we already know he's there. And I think that's a part of what's going to help us have strategies for no matter who's in political office. At some point, we have to have some accountability. And if we don't have safety, if we don't have housing, what do we really have? How do we really begin to build something? Can we have a black Republican work with a black liberal, work with a black Democrat without us writing people off because maybe they're not a Republican? Like, I watch us do that as a people. I watch us do that all the time.
You talked about
Sorry, Daryl.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, bro. And I didn't mean
wait, I'm done.
I think part of it, in my opinion, is that we spoke about why black men are killing black men, why young black men are killing young black men, why black men are killing black women. It has to do with values. It has to do with a lack of values, a lack of respect for each other. And where does that come from? It comes from our homes. And whether we accept it or not, that's part of the challenge. We got to take responsibility there, but we also need to talk about the system that have not invested in our communities. So when you talk about what all that needs to occur, it's a combination of things. Mervin's right. For those who have gone the wrong route and come back home, we need to figure out a way to integrate them in. But for those who are here, we need to also talk about how do we invest in them. You know, a lot of my work and a lot of our work has been spent in prevention. How do you get kids and young people not to think that way, to hate each other, to not want to work with each other, but instead to want to love each other and to deal with each other? So in my opinion, part of it is that we in the past have not invested them. So we are reaping what we sowed. And we sowed so little in them. That's what's happening. The 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old, he didn't have people investing in him. And you want to figure out why they're killing each other. Look at who's killing each other. Those who we didn't invest in. And we talk about it now. They didn't go to preschool. I'm sorry. They went to school. They were behind and they stayed behind. Typically, that's what happened. And I see some and recognize that, okay, some kids are smart and get into trouble, but they get lost. So we got to talk about also how do we keep them from getting lost? And that becomes a reason I will talk about the system and what's in place that we already, by taxes, we invest in, and we should require them through our own agenda to invest in our communities and wherever we live. And I just happen to live still in the neighborhood, choose to live in the neighborhood. But that's the reason I'm here, to invest. And what Sister Javon was saying earlier about us owning our place, that's what we did when we came here. We bought. And we continue to buy because we think that investing in our community is what it should be about. And I get it, you know, there's a lot of other things going on, and Kula is right, but white supremacy is there. But Ro, what you're talking about in terms of values and what we're talking about of redemption, all those things are part of what we have to look at. And we can't say one over the other, because they all are necessary at this point. And we're just going to have to continue to do this, conversate, but also do this, work at it, and make things happen. Because if we don't make things happen very shortly, we will become unimportant. And we're to watch it, because after this election, who knows?
Right on. Javon.
But I think that that part make things happen. That's the part we have to focus on. Like, we need to redirect our young people to struggle, because one of the things that we're not teaching them is what to struggle for. In order to get out of this situation, we're going to have to struggle, and we like comfort. And the white man, we have allowed him to put his mind in our mind, and the things we value and how we get there come straight from the value of the white man's mind. And that's really what we have to talk about, is what kind of struggle. I was taught that he who gives you the diameter of your knowledge controls the circumference of your activity, period. So we are letting white people teach us, and then we expect them to get a different outcome. I'm so tired of us not taking the opportunity. And I'm only saying this because I work really hard to do this, but not taking the opportunity to teach young people what we're saying. We act like it has to be done at a school. We act like we can't do it after school in the community. We act like we can't homeschool. I'm not saying that everybody has the opportunity to do that, but we have creativity. We have homeschool groups. We have lots of ways to help our young people to get their mind back. But it takes the courage to admit that we got to teach them something else to do better, instead of mastering the platform that we've been given that continues to cause us to harm each other and have a destructive community. And when we start to talk about values, it gets really twisted, because this person values that. You can't say this to this person's child. You can't do this over here. And it breaks unity, when we need to be agreeing on what we're going to do with these young people. Are we going to allow them to keep killing each other? Because the last time I checked, these was our young people. But we have lost all control, and the only people that seem to control them is the white man, and we allow it. And then we listen to this foolish rhetoric that they got straight out of a textbook for some people that have been trying to kill us since we arrived in this state. Or in this country. It's ridiculous. And that's how we start to change the value system, so we can get economics. We got young people who don't want to work, don't want to go to work. There's so many issues, but in the Black community, we sometimes struggle to address those issues.
How can we impart that to this whole political system, Jay? Like, how can we use any part of politics and all? Because here's the thing, even though we talked about the things in our community that we're struggling with, it does impact why we can't really utilize the system. Everything we all just said. So we'll be trying to solve something, but we don't even understand why we can't even see the equation. So how can we use whatever we have to be impactful in this political system, or at least put things on the books, or no matter who the president is or whatever? How do Black people get to be okay? How do we utilize that? Are there a need for Black politicians? Are there a need for anybody Black in politics?
Yeah,
Yes,
I think there is, and I think what happens is that. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sister Muhammad. I'm
No,
sorry.
go ahead.
I'm
I
sorry.
just spoke. I was just going to say I'm in the South, and there is a different need for politics in our community. Like I recognize that San Francisco was different. Here, where I am in the South, where there's a true lack of equity, and it's simple. It's not as complicated as we make it in the Bay Area. The fact is, I'm in a city that is 50% Black, and they've never had an elected Black mayor, and they have one Black department head who's over rec and park. So equity looks like the leadership reflecting the people. That's not a national election. That's a local election. But we have been taught to vote against our interests. And so, yes, I believe that local politics are necessary, because who's gone or who should look out for us more than each other? But the South is a little bit of a different vessel, and we need y'all. But we need the pure y'all. Like it's kind of like we don't need all of these distractions. We need just the straight ticket to how we make progress. And so I'm not taking away the need for us to be a part of the political system, but I am suggesting that we have walked away from the idea that we need to struggle. Just do what you have to do. There's an individual responsibility for us, and there's a community responsibility. I came here and bought a farm. I was taught I need to prepare to feed myself. I'm learning how to be a farmer. I don't know how to do that, but that's my contribution to both myself and my community. I'm running a clinic. I have I'm committed toward making sure that Black people are working. I'm committed toward improving our mental health. We have a youth program. We are trying to allow people in our environment to be themselves. I encourage Black women to show up as Black as they can be, with their own hair and everything else. I think it's a process, and we can do a lot with a little bit. And especially those of us who are blessed to get the opportunities to control large budgets and to be able to influence the economics in the Black community. It's our duty. If we're not doing that, y'all should be getting rid of us, because it's our duty to do that. And that's the part that we have to remember. But it takes courage, because they can keep this job. If I can't use this job to help my environment, then they can have it back. But you got to be ready to detach. And if they do that, then maybe I'm going to grow, some vegetables and have some chickens. But you can best believe you're going to find me struggling to make sure I change the community. I live in a rural community on a block of farms. Everybody is a Trump supporter around me. They have flags hanging. I don't care. That had nothing to do with me. I don't care about that. I care about us making progress, and I'm getting a little tired, of us having rhetorical conversations. I'm not talking about that in this situation, but it gets so frustrating because the work is not complicated. We don't have to do a capstone project on it. We just got to get up tomorrow and do something.
Wow. Anybody else want to build on that?
And I think that's key, Sister Muhammad, is, I have conversations with a lot of brothers and sisters, and they want to talk about what's not being done for them on a national scale politically. And I always ask them the same thing. What are you doing? What are you doing here locally? Like, how are you making effect? How are you affecting things every day in your community? And we talked about earlier, because the original point I was bringing up was the safety, bro, right? Like, I refuse to be scared. And I refuse not to have these hard conversations, even with my community. So with African-American males, I'm having a lot of really hard conversations with these brothers, right, about accountability and responsibility. But what I understand is that that's going to take for them to trust me, for me really to have that. That's why I said I won't leave my neighborhood, because that trust that I'm building creates the safety that we need in the community. So I'll be able to, at least me, will be able to go to these young brothers and say, hey man, look, this is what we can't do. We can't continue to kill each other, excuse me. But I can't do that if I leave, and I can't do that if I don't build trust, and I can't do that, then no safety will come out of that. So you're right. We do need to have these conversations about accountability and responsibility. But for me, on an everyday scale, I walk my Oak Park neighborhood because I need for them to know, right, that at least there is a voice there that is opposite of what, you know what I'm saying, the socially constructed identity that they've been given. So yeah, I'm there. I'm trying to get employment and education and mental health services, me, you know, as an individual. And there's a group of people, it's not just me, but I'm saying we have to do a better job of being accountable to our communities with regards to having these hard conversations with our communities. And that's going to take a certain level of courage and a certain level of not being scared. And I'm not scared. So, you know, that's just what it is. And so,
so can I,
Sister,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, brother.
You know, all I was going to say though, and going back to whether or not we need black politicians, if we're looking, I'm gonna piss somebody off. If we're trying to get Jesus to be elected, then no. But if we're trying to get somebody who can represent us that we are going to support, yes, I'm gonna do national. 2008, we elected Barack Obama. 2010, we stayed home. The whole Congress changed, and the brother couldn't do nothing after 2008. And some people will argue, well, he didn't do nothing for black folks. He was not in a position to do anything because we did not follow through on our part. 2010, 2012, 2014, 2016, we did not do our part. So locally, if we elect somebody, I don't care who it is, but let's just say we re-elect Alan Warren. If we elect Alan and we don't support him in the agenda that we should be giving him to say, this is what we're trying to do, Alan, we need your support to do it, we don't understand how that works. Because to me, when we look at elected officials, we seem to think that they're supposed to carry the water. They're not supposed to carry the water. They're supposed to carry the message. It's our responsibility to become connected, to go out both downtown, City Hall, County Board of Supervisors, and make sure folks understand what we expect of them. See, I watch city council members, the council member in Natomas, and she'll go to, Ashby will go to city council, and she'll talk about the aquatic center in Natomas. She'll get $8 million for aquatic center, and in the audience will be 30 or 40 of our residents who talk about how important aquatic center is to their neighborhood. See, when we go down, or Alan goes down and says he's trying to do something for our neighborhood, not enough of us are going down. So as we move forward, my thought is that we need to also be able to, one, give an agenda, and then two, help follow through that agenda and be available and visible to make that happen. So that's our obligation as a community to also be involved. Yes, there's obligation to the leader. He or she who gets elected in that position has a responsibility for those that elected them, but also those that elected them have a responsibility to hold them accountable. And that's how the process works.
Okay, you just said, I was getting ready to say, is it support or hold accountable? But I just heard the
both.
last part is basically.
I do both. You know,
gotcha.
Folks, you know, and to me, that's what it should be. Sometimes people get a little upset with me because they don't understand. But my thing is, I'm trying to figure out who is trying to do what we're trying to do for our neighborhood. Those persons, I want to support them. Those who don't, I don't have time to talk to them. I don't have that relationship with them. But those who are trying to push the agenda for our community, I'm going to spend that time. And I'm going to spend that time because it's important to me that we push the agenda that benefits our community. And I don't do that selfishly. If I did it selfishly, I'll do it quietly. But when you get out to be visible, as many of you are, you're not doing things selfishly. You're doing things to benefit the community. And that part, to me, has to be remembered. Because you don't do shit selfishly out loud. You do selfishly, they do quiet. And that's just how it rolls.
Sister Ro, I want to go back to what Sister Muhammad talked about, because I think it's really important. And she's just bottom line, get out and do the work. Do what you do, but do the work. I think it's important, and with that, and this goes back to trust and unity, that respecting the different work that different people do. Sister Kula, she does a lot of legislative work. She understands that piece. She's knowledgeable about it. And it's very important that we have that person in that position doing that work. That's not me. I'm the person in the street with the brothers like Brother Benjamin reclaiming lives and helping brothers transform their lives, turn their lives around, and learn how to give back. We all got different work to do. What we have to do is respect each other's lane and stop down talking the next cat who's doing something different. Just because I'm not doing what you do doesn't make what you do any less valuable than what I do. And if you look deeper into it, we need each other doing what we do in order for us to be successful as a whole. But one of the things that keep us divided is that we tend to operate in silos, and we tend to think that our work is the most important work. And that's not necessarily true. And so we got to rise above that and just at a very minimum respect the person that's out there doing the work, respect their lane, and support people when you can. We can move the whole ball forward.
So, Sister Kua, is there ever a time where you work with brothers like Brother Michael and Brother Merv and Brother Daryl? Do you, with your work with Bawapa and your other activities, do you ever work alongside? I know you work with Black women and other groups, but do you ever work with Black men?
I would actually probably not recently. I mean, I've spoken with Michael's youth from his organization. I went there, did a talk. You know, I go wherever I'm asked. And so I wouldn't say, you know, recently that I have. Like I said, my work is really around political education. And so wherever I'm able to come in and talk about politics and what's happening and relate that to social justice, and also fight for folks to be elected who are about social justice, that's the work that I do. And if there's a place for me to come in and talk about that and involve people in there, then I'm for it.
See, I only ask that question because I think sometimes where the power really lies that we may overlook, not like we do it on purpose. You mentioned something about silos. I think people work with what they can. Like maybe that's their lane for the moment. If you're driving, you can't be all over the other lanes if you're over in this lane. But at some point, I feel like our enemy knows that there is something between us. Like even when I see people, like we'll talk about everybody else having a right to live, but not Black people really having the right to live as Black people. I watch us sometimes struggle, and I do that myself sometimes when it comes to men. Like I don't want to hear nothing y'all got to say. You know what I mean? Where it's kind of like I probably should hear something you got to say, because at the end of the day, we are going to need each other the way we never needed each other before, because that's kind of how the world creates it. Even though we think we're way over here and we're safe, somehow you get drugged right back into standing next to the brother who you thought, not you or me, but I'm just saying in general, that we didn't need. So we're talking about young men, and not just the young men who commit crimes. I watch young Black men who don't fit into none of that stuff. Who is that weird kid that like to read books, or maybe he's in the Garth, or maybe he's in the whatever. I watch so many of those kids struggle because they don't fit into the other box. But at some point, we still all need each other. How can we create? Because I think that would be strong politically if we did have a way to sit down across the lines and have a plan for if this person wins, if this person doesn't win.
Well, I mean, I think even a while back, like what we had tried to, I'll say the key is, I think, not undermining each other. So you can respect what each other is doing because there's value in the work, but then it is, again, the undermining. But I go back to, what are you trying to get to, and what is that goal, and what is your lens? Because even if maybe you don't think you're undermining the work that I'm doing, right? But if you're on this side and you're like, well, actually, I actually think this was better for X, Y, and Z, and so I went this way. But I'm like, yo, that was undermining what I'm doing here. That just cut the leg off from under me, right? How do we have that conversation? You know, and so honestly, that's really the crux of the issue, right? Like, you know, I've known Merv for quite a long time, and you know, I had posted something on social media about Alan Warren because I have been I worked with a group in Robla, and there were some things that I saw that was happening in my course of working with the group. I had shared that information, and it was really infuriating with my work with Councilmember Alan Warren's office. And then, like, you know, folks started to come at me, and I'm like, yo, I'm talking about what I saw with my own two eyes and working with this community and what they were trying to get, and how Alan Warren was not supportive of that and actually thwarted that. And so it's like, and that's the issue, because we keep talking about, well, can we just respect each other and have these values? But sometimes they're actually, we're going in different ways. And so then how do we have the conversation? You know, it's just, I don't know, this conversation is just, we were all met up at the Urban League and we were actually trying to have a similar conversation, and it went kind of left. And I know Daryl and I have been trying to bring it back because it has to be, it has to happen, but it has to be the right facilitator, or else it's just, we can't move. And it's tiring.
I think, and I remember that Kula, and during that we disagreed with each other on that particular thing. And I remember commenting on that. There's one thing that I'm not gonna do is get into it with you on Facebook. That's not the platform, and I never would. I think if we disagree, because we are friends, that we can have a conversation. But Facebook isn't the place for it. Now I think I don't think we ever did have that conversation, but just the respect that I have for you as a person and the work that you do, even though I thoroughly disagreed with you. My comment was, you know what, Kula, I don't agree with you, but I'm not going to disrespect you or have it out with you on Facebook. And I think that's something that we all got to do when we disagree, is call each other. Daryl's good for just pick up the phone and call me. I don't see why it's so difficult for our community, even, when we disagree adamantly, pick up the phone and have that conversation, no matter how uncomfortable it is.
Well, theoretically, I think that growth a lot of times only comes through discomfort. So if people walking around here wanting to be comfortable in every thought that they have, then there's going to be a problem. The key to critical thinking is taking a look at both sides, period, point blank. I force myself, right, to listen. It can be opposition. I can have a thought, but I force myself to listen so I can maintain a balance and make the best informed decision that I can. And that is something that continues to divide our people. We get so emotionally invested in something that, we feel is right, that it closes us off to listening to another side of a topic. And we have to get away from that. I grew up under Mr. Roberts. That's, whatever. He's my mentor. And so he and I, as I grew into an adult, we might have differences. And just like Mr. Brunson said, he'll say, call me and we'll talk about it. Right? We'll hash it out. And at some point in time, it might be an agreement to disagree. But at the same time, I'm able to look at both sides of a discussion and make the best informed decision that I can. And we have to get away from that as people. We have to, be able to come to the table, put both our sides on the table or whatever it is, and then, take out what's good from both and see where the compromise is. There's nothing wrong with that. Other communities do it a lot. I've worked with, Mexican communities and Southeast Asian community. And the one thing about them is they can be in complete opposition. I've seen it on the back end of a meeting, but you'll never know it. You know what I'm saying? The outside won't know it, but they'll be, almost to fisticuffs. So we have to get to a place where, we can sit down, understand that we're going to be on differences, but then come to, have a conversation about it.
I think that's a great challenge there. I really do. I just think that how do we get the question somebody asked me on this other line says, how do we get Black folks to vote, and no matter who they vote for, how do we get Black folks to vote? And the other part is why is that so important? How do we get us to vote, and why is it important for us to vote?
I think from a historical standpoint is the fact that you can look in your family, you can find somebody who can tell you at a time when they couldn't vote, and when they weren't allowed to vote. So the privilege and the right of voting is something that I take with me. It's hard for me not to, unless I'm sick as a dog in the last 40 years of my life, only once that I recall, I didn't vote. And I have a grandfather who basically said to me at 16 years old, if you're in my house, everybody when they hit 18 is going to vote, because he grew up in the South when he couldn't vote and his wife couldn't vote. So he recognized in his opinion the importance of having that right. So for me, it just becomes that. It's like, that's the right you have, you should use it, or at least acknowledge the fact you have it. Who you vote for is your choice. That's on that piece. But I also think that, as we talk about this, there are moments that we just simply got to understand. Look, other communities have problems. I was hearing you, Mike, and I understand what you're saying. But, we look around Sacramento and there are other problems that Southeast Asians have. Elected officials who are being called misogynist, race, sexist, and the like. So those are things that are happening right around us. So it's not just our community. It is just what's happening, period. And we got to remember that that's what folks call Trump, misogynist and racist. So, there are things that are happening all over that is not just indicative of the Black community. It is what we have to address, because if we're talking about coming together and setting an agenda, a community-wide agenda, that we really got to figure out ways to do that. And I am of the opinion that it needs to be a community-wide, not just a district agenda, but I think it needs to be a community-wide agenda, so that we begin talking to each other across district boundaries, across city boundaries. It's a damn shame that people in North Sacramento, El Paso Heights, don't really deal with people on South Sac. I know that for firsthand. And Mervin can't say it. I'm telling anybody here something they don't know. It's just a fact. We have this as a city. So, we got to get past that. We got to start recognizing what each other do. The young brother who was going to be on this show, you mentioned that he ran against Eric Garrett. I didn't even know who he was. And I'm politically active. So I didn't even know him by name until you said that. So to me, got to start figuring out ways to work together across lines, party lines, whatever lines, sexist line, whatever lines.
Right on. Sister Cool, why is it important for to get our people to vote, and why is it important to vote?
I say vote, and to be honest, I wasn't a citizen until 2012. As an immigrant to this country, I was undocumented, so I didn't become a citizen until 2012. But I was active in politics up until I was able to, when I got my citizenship. I was involved, helping run campaigns, volunteering for different things. And so I think my thing is about being consistently involved. So you vote and what? How are you going to stay consistent in a way that works for you when it is not an election year? But it is important to vote because elected officials also look at demographics and areas in terms of who's voting, and then that's who they also pay attention to and cater to. So if they see that you're not coming, that this area or this group does not vote, then they're not also paying attention to you. But we've also seen, though, that Black women, we come out and we vote. But at the same time, does that also translate into the kind of policies that happen, right? So that's why I always like to say vote and what, because voting is not enough.
Right on. What about you, Brother Michael? Why is it important to vote? How do we get our people to vote?
I think it's important to vote because it's funny that a lot of people, they'll say their vote doesn't count, but they put a lot of energy and effort into suppressing that vote. So for those that say it don't count, it is what it is. But I feel like what happens is that in the whatever level of history we have in this country, it was some brother that looked like me who died, so I'd have the right to vote. And so that's a little bit of symbolism, but at the same time, it's something that I believe in strongly. And so I believe in that level of voice. But something back to what Sister Kula was saying, which is you can't vote and not act. That's the problem I have. People want to vote and then not act. They want to cast a ballot, but then there's no everyday action from them. And like I said, people oftentimes, in terms of looking at the government, they'll vote and then they'll have these complaints, but it's like you're not taking any action either. So I don't rely on just the vote. You know what I'm saying? I don't know where that vote lands, to be honest with you. I do fill it out and I vote. But what I do know is that I vote based on the fact that I'm taking action on those initiatives that I believe in.
Right on. What about you, Brother Merv? How do you get Black people to vote? Why does voting matter?
Well, I got to push back a little bit on Brother Benjamin and Brother Daryl, because I think today, I don't think the historical perspective inspires today's voters in the Black community a whole lot. I know it does for some, but I just don't believe that that's what's going to get a person up to the polls. I know when Alan Warren ran, when he first ran, what he happened to run the same time Obama did, but I know Del Paso Heights had a historic turnout, and that's because we had a reason to vote. There was one of us running. So that's what inspired a lot of us to get up and go get involved in the process. So I think the way we get people there is we got to, it goes back to that information piece Brother Benjamin was talking about earlier. The average person in the community today don't understand the connection between voting and the resources that they see in their community. And it goes to what Sister Kula was just talking about. The people that are elected pay attention to those who vote. They know how many people turned out in the Heights, Oak Park, Woodlake, Roebler, and those. They know that. So when it comes down to distributing resources, they're going to favor the people that is going to keep them in office or vote them out of office. But the average person in the community hasn't connected those dots. So let's go back to that trust and that information. Those of us that are in the community at the ground level, that's our responsibility. That's our responsibility, whether we chose to be people with voices or not. If you have a voice, you got to get the information to the people, because when you do that, I believe we will make the right choice. We get accurate information to the people, they will make informed choices. That's when they'll start getting up and voting, when they start to understand that Woodlake and Costco and that Tribute Road over in here in District 2, that was built because resources were directed over there as opposed to on Grand Avenue, because those people voted and we didn't. So when we're talking about unity, we're talking about getting accurate information. We got to help the average person, and even the not so average person, the person we don't think is going to vote. I guarantee you, when you start helping them connect the dots between what he has and what he doesn't, he or she, what they have and what they don't have, and how that's connected to the vote, we'll get out and vote.
Right on. Sister Javon, I want to make sure I don't leave you out as we get ready to do a wrap up. Why should we vote, and how to get Black people to vote? What's the importance of it?
Well, I think even to expand off Brother Mervin, people need to understand that the vote is connected to the laws that are made. And so we have a lot of comments about the law and how the law fails us, but that's important. And see, young people would vote if it was something for them to vote for, but they're often excluded from the vote. So when you look at Biden and you look at Trump, what's in it for the young people? I mean, people's mama is telling them to vote now because, again, you know, if we get Democrat, if Biden wins, then somehow life is better because of all the reasons life is better. But I just think it to be more practical if young people understood, especially in this era of police killings and Black men and women being killed, that your vote is attached to the law that's made. You have direct connection to making those laws. That's amazing, because that's what young people today are attached to, the criminal justice movement and the social justice movement. And so I do believe in voting, but I don't believe that our ancestors fought for us to vote for people who aren't helping us. I believe that they lost their lives and they struggled for us to make a difference. And so when somebody tells me to vote because I'm somehow obligated to vote for a person not even going to represent me, that sounds a little ridiculous, because I'm not afraid of whoever is the president. I'm going to work my way through it, and I'm not going to be bullied. I'm sorry if you can't hear me. I'm still on hotspot since the hurricane.
You're good.
We still don't have any. Okay. So that's why I think that the vote is important, but I also think we have to do a lot more to make sure that young people are included in the initiatives that we're planning and what we're voting for. Because it's not that they won't show up, it's that, you know, they don't have anything to show up for often.
Right on. Y'all, this is the absolute final question. If you can make your comment short, all I want to wrap up with this last question is, what strategy should Black people be instituting? I mean, now, but especially the day after the election. What is something we need to put in drive, like, immediately? What sacrifices need to be made immediately?
I just want to say that
Oh, you froze.
the day after the election, we could be fighting.
Okay,
We ain't even talked about that. We could be fighting. Like, we don't know what's going to happen the day after the election. I said that the truth is, the day after the election, we might be all outside fighting. And we ain't even spoke about that yet, because this is going to be a violent election, no matter who wins. And that's why we have to talk more about what we're going to do, regardless of who wins. And so I suggest that the conversation continues on a more national level, so we can talk about what happens after, with the reality. See, we didn't do a lot of focusing on the fact that if Biden wins or if Trump wins, it's going to be some type of protest on the street. But we still got to eat. We still got to wake up and be in our community. We still got to make a way to bridge the wealth gap. Like, we still have to do these things no matter who we're advocating on here. And we have got to talk about that a little bit more. So I'm planning on being prepared to protect myself the day after the election.
So, Dave, I'm taking this note because this is just one part of a series that I'm working on. So I'm gonna be adding more people from Chicago, like from all over the country, because I think as much as we put other things on TV, people got to see us working this out. This can't be something that has to be done behind closed doors, because a lot of things that we practice is things that we see in the media. So we have the power to put other things out there so people can know that we're having the conversation. Brother Michael, what should we do day after the election, right now?
Woo! So, man, day after election, like the sister said, you got to be prepared to protect yourself, straight up and down. I mean, that's just what it is at this point. But I think that we have to continue to have these conversations about what organizing has to look. We have to, as the sister said, we have to become more self-sufficient. I'm not looking, and I've never looked for this country to provide the equity and the, what we need to survive as a people. So I'm kind of pitting this black contract with Sacramento, right? Kind of putting that together. You know what I'm saying? What that needs to look like, what we need here locally, and that's what we want to see, how we want to see this city grow as it pertains to what our needs are. So it's the contract with Black Sacramento that I want to pitch to the city. Where I can where we can go and talk about how we can become more self-sufficient within this local Sacramento area. So it's just planning and organizing. And one of the most important things is disseminating information that's accurate and that's going to help our people move forward.
Right on, Sister Kula.
Yeah. I would say, make a plan with yourself and say, how am I, Kula Kone, going to keep working to bring about social justice in my community, right? How am I going to keep doing that in my own way? Make that commitment. People make New Year's resolutions, right? You should make like a political involvement resolution, right? Like, just within yourself, are you going to pick an organization that you really respect and want to be more involved in? Are you going to say that I'm actually going to schedule meetings with my council member or my county board of supervisors? I'm going to, make a point to actually watch these meetings and find out what's happening. So I would say make a plan with yourself for engagement and be realistic. Just like New Year resolution, sometimes we get too lofty and, by like March is done. So just make a plan with yourself how you're going to stay engaged to bring about social justice, and then just keep working on it.
Right on, Brother Merv.
I hadn't thought about it, but I agree exactly with what Kula just said, to do a little self-evaluation, some introspection. But then at the same time, we've done it before. We've had a meeting amongst, I would say, stakeholders, some brothers throughout the city. So I think once we do that individual evaluation, we come together and as a roundtable, as we've done before, and figure out how, as Black men, what are we going to do? How are we going to stand up? What's our role? Figure that out and present it to our community and act on it. I'm such a fan of what Sister Muhammad say, just do it. So I think after this election, Daryl, Brother Benjamin, it's time for us to have another roundtable, see what the landscape is, and figure out how, as Black men, we're going to step up and stand up for our community, whether that's the Black agenda or the contract with Sacramento or whatever it is. As Black men, it's time for us to step up and fulfill our responsibilities.
Right on, Brother Daryl Roberts.
So my my emotions behind the things that we do, talk about voting or whatever, is historical, but it's because I've lived it. And because I've lived it, that's just the way that I roll. I say that because the day after the election, no matter who wins, I'm going to get up the next morning and go towards the Roberts Family Development Center and continue the work that we're doing with young people, trying to prepare them for the future, whichever direction they choose to go. But then in terms of the political part, Kula says it best. I'm going to figure out who won. I'm going to call them, congratulate them, and send them a text. I'm going to do that because part of what has to be is a recognition that these relationships have to occur in a way that allows us to move the agenda in a way we've never done before. Michael's right. If Michael is putting together a Black agenda for Sacramento, he needs to start on this with these folks here, begin talking to them about it, and expand that to others and say, okay, does this make sense? And if it makes sense, how do we work together to begin pushing that agenda citywide? You know, to me, there's no one answer, but there's a number of answers. I got to say one last thing, well, before I go.
Please.
At the last election, after Trump won, I went on Facebook and I said, Trump won the election, so what? I'm gonna get up and do my thing. A very well respected sister who right now I have to smile and think about it. She pretty much said, F that. And she was basically telling me I need to be mad. So if you need to be mad, you need to be upset, if you need to be frustrated, do that also. But the next day, start thinking about what Kula said. What are we going to do now? And that's what it has to be. Whether it be if Biden wins, talk about reparations. I got a brother who told me, well, you know, I want to talk about reparations. Then after the day after the election, begin talking about reparations and begin making that your agenda, because whatever it is going to take us. And as Sister Muhammad has said, we're just going to have to do something. And we're going to have to just continue to do it.
Well, y'all, thank you so much for joining me. Don't hang up just yet. Thank you so much for joining me. As we were sitting here tonight, we're definitely going to keep this conversation going with more people. But I also think we have to figure out how to get all of us to a Black table. And not that we all agree, but maybe we get at the table to find out where we are connected at. And I'm really committed to that, because I feel like tonight we have a pretty good diverse group, but I also think we don't realize how much strength we have in our own diversity. You know, because you don't have to always agree with each other. You don't have to always see it exactly the way the person see it. Michael, finish that plan for Black Sacramento, whatever you got going on, and it could always be retouched up. It could always be added to or taken away from. But just finish it. That's all I want to say. Just because one of the things that Black people do, we be waiting to hear from everybody, and then we don't even get our shit finished. I'm just gonna be honest, because that's happened to me. And I'll be like, man, I'm waiting to hear back from. But if you just put it out there, that to me was the beauty for me with Q, is that he put it out there, and I didn't even know people didn't want rappers not to put stuff out there. They put out more stuff detrimental than that. So I was just like, well, shit, that's just a plan that didn't even happen. So I say put it out there. You have Kua here. We have brilliant minds. We have ran almost everything in America. We have Black people at every level you could think of, not just the stuff people tell us that we're at. There's Black people everywhere. So if there's a know-how, if you want to know how to do it, how to get it done, we here. And so we got to keep this conversation going, but also with conversation comes action. So everybody on this call tonight is an action person. We just not here talking because we just like to talk on this Sunday, and you know. But I thank y'all so much. And I'm gonna leave us on out of here. Don't hang on. Let me just close it, and then when we get off air, then hold on just a minute. I'm good with this McFadden head up in here. Ain't no stopping us down. I don't know about y'all, but when I was growing up and Black folks got like a new house or something, or somebody got a brand new job or something, they put this on, and we was like marching to where we got to go, because ain't no stopping us now. What? Holla at you, girl. See y'all later. Peace.